When it comes to fighting games, one series has always managed to remain my favorite, and that's Street Fighter. I've played and loved most, if not all of the games in this series, and the most recent release is no exception. Street Fighter 4, in my non-professional opinion, is the best fighting game to be released this gen. And for as much shit that I've given Capcom in the past, and will do so in the future depending on what they do next, I can't deny that they've crafted a very solid fighting game. But before we received the Street Fighter 4 we know now, there was another drastically different title proposed to Capcom that never saw the light of day. So today on Gaming Mysteries, I'll be talking about Street Fighter 4 Flashback. Before we go any further though, I should state that since this game never made it out of its proposal stage, there's no gameplay I can show you of the title, though there is some nice concept art I can show you, and I'll of course have some Street Fighter 4 gameplay running in the background. With that out of the way, let's get started. Now, Street Fighter 4 Flashback was a game pitched to Capcom back in 2006 by Backbone Entertainment, a company that had worked on some Capcom titles in the past, such as Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo HD Remix. Now, Flashback was meant to be a proper 3D sequel to the Street Fighter series. It would feature the standard one-on-one fights, online play, and most notably, a single-player mode known as Ryu's Journey. This mode was allegedly going to be a free-roaming 3D action game with a story, levels to explore, enemies to fight, NPCs to talk with, and bosses to fight, which sounded awesome. If there's one thing I feel Capcom's fighters are missing, is some decent single-player content, so I would have loved to play through this game mode. Now, to touch on the gameplay a bit more, it seems, at least from a first glance, that the gameplay of Flashback would have been similar to the Street Fighter 4 that we know now. It would have been a game rendered in 3D with 2D gameplay, but there are a number of differences that this version would have held. First, we have the flashback mechanic that would allow players to rewind the game by a few seconds once a round by holding light punch and light kick. Aside from just this, there were apparently other time powers that would allow you to speed up or slow down opponents. These mechanics sound interesting, though I don't see them as being very balanced, and they're a tad user-friendly for my tastes. Though being user-friendly seemed to be this game's goal, thus I present to you the game's proposed optional New Millennium control scheme, which would use only 4 buttons and have simplified special moves. So, for an example, instead of you doing the standard Dragon Punch motion, you would simply hit down and a punch and boom, DPs for days. Though as I said, this was optional as they would have a more classic control scheme as well. We would later see more of the 4-button style with Capcom titles such as Tatsunoko vs. Capcom or Marvel 3 for a more recent example. Something very cool that would have been included with this game was a number of bonus games. These games were to be arcade-perfect emulations, and the idea was to have Street Fighter all the way up until Street Fighter 3 Third Strike. And yes, that includes every title in between, such as the Alpha series, and even an enhanced 3D remake of Street Fighter 2 Turbo. Now, this just sounds amazing, yet at the same time, given Capcom's business practices as of late, there is no chance in hell this would have gone down. I mean, don't get me wrong, all of the titles would probably be on the same disc, but you'd have to wait a few months to pay extra money so you could play the content you technically already own. 'Tis the Capcom way. Depressing, isn't it? But of course, none of this happened because Capcom didn't approve the project. Well, none of this happened except the DLC thing. Capcom's intent on milking the fuck out of that shit. And hey, they're doing a pretty good job. Go you. So this project wasn't approved and we would eventually get the Street Fighter 4 we know now. But not everyone is happy about that. The lead designer of Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo HD holy fuck, that's a mouthful. But he isn't happy with the direction that the series has taken. He wanted to usher in a new era of Street Fighter, simplifying the series even more so than Street Fighter 4 did, because he feels that, and I quote, SF4, despite its familiar look and feeling, is still very much a complicated game. And while I understand where he's getting at, I personally don't feel that simplifying fighting games is the way to go, as it seems that's all every company is doing with their fighters as of late. And I understand why. A more simple game means a potentially larger audience because there's not as much of a steep learning curve, which means more people will play your game because they want to learn shit. But I like that learning curve. I like learning shit. I like complexity. I like games being more technical. But then again, I'm insane, so I probably shouldn't talk about this shit. But that's Street Fighter 4 Flashback, an interesting version of Street Fighter 4 that never came to be. Now, while I certainly would have liked to play this title, if for no other reason than to just check out that single player mode, I still feel that Street Fighter 4 was a better direction for Capcom to take. It's not too simple and it's not too complicated. It's a good balance, and I'll be interested to see where they take the series from here. And I hope to God they don't run it into the ground. But look, if you guys don't run the Street Fighter series into the ground, I won't take cheap shots at you guys for like a month and a half or something like that. That's a pretty sweet deal if you think about it. So you think that over. Don't run it into the ground. But this has been Gaming Mysteries. Thanks for watching.